This is the Aurora. It's the most powerful model ever produced by those Danish purveyors of slightly quirky hypercars, Zenvo. It's got the most feisty V12 ever fitted to a production road car, and it's supposed to be light, connected and quite Danish, which means that we need to tage et kig, which is Danish for take a look, obviously. Today, we'll be looking at how you get 1,850 brake horsepower from a 6.6 litre V12, deciding which of the two models that we'd buy if we were incredibly rich, and also taking a look at an interior that leans heavily on the digital detox.
We're here at Zenvo just as the company is preparing for its appearance at the Goodwood Festival of Speed 2026, and things are very busy.
But let's start with the idea. The Aurora, you won't be that surprised to figure out, is named after the Aurora Borealis, the cosmic light show. So this car is supposed to be light, fast and beautiful. This is a ground-up new car with two distinct versions. First is the Agil, which is a kind of bewinged track day version, and then there's this, the Tur, which is more of a touring kind of road-biased hypercar. And when they say these things are bespoke, they really do mean it, because this is a bespoke chassis, bespoke body, bespoke engine, bespoke gearbox. Even the badge is different to the one they had before. They both get a carbon composite monocoque with complicated organic-looking subframes hanging off it. They also get carbon composite panels, but they are very different, and one has a lot more horsepower than the other. But I bet you guessed wrong.
So the Aurora also has another two distinct personalities, but we'll start with the Tur. More of a road-biased variant, it's got more bodywork and less spoilerage, a bit more pared back and elegant instead of in your track day face. It's obviously more understated and, dare I say it, prettier. Depends on what floats your boat really. And understated is still pretty overstated, it looks every inch the hypercar. And the designers say that it has a Danish flavour, because it's got Scandinavian sense of form but with more organic lines like the best Danish furniture design. But think McLaren Speedtail versus the Agil's Senna rather than Porsche GT3 or GT3 RS.
On the front of the Tur, it's pretty much as you might expect. It's got some massive gaps to get air onto the rads, and then this really big, flat kind of carbon fibre splitter on the front. It's also got a big vent here that draws that high pressure air out of the front of the car. But as you move around and past these very frowny, quite Zenvo-like headlights, you sort of look at this angle and think it's got quite a short front overhang, but the front of the car is actually way out here. It's kind of a broadhead arrow shape, and that's sort of indicative of this whole carbon fibre monocoque, which kind of sits inboard like the canopy of a jet fighter. It looks really trick. And then as you move down the side of the car, it's got 21-inch front wheels and 22-inch rears, both with centre locks, and these really, really nice big spar carbon fibre rear view mirrors. Then as you're looking at the rear view mirror, you see gap. This car is about the edit, about how things have been shrink wrapped around everything. So you can see the full face of the tyre through the aero that comes down the side of the car. It's got really deep sills, which is all about moving the air about in a really interesting way. And then there's this central roof scoop, which obviously draws cold air from the top of the car straight into the engine. It's got this quite nice flowing feel to it, like a sheet of silk has kind of been thrown out over the top of the car. And the scoop kind of feeds down into these broad rear arches and then into this long tailed kind of vibe, which is like a ducktail, but it's kind of narrowing down towards the back of the car, which gives it more of a waist. It feels more, I don't know, more elegant and more pared back than the Agil. Underneath that, you've got high level exhaust up here, and then it's all gap. So a bit like a Ferrari F40, you can see the transaxle gearbox hung out the back there and quite a lot of tyre. It makes it feel lightweight visually. Interestingly, I was talking to one of the designers and he said they were initially inspired by racing motorcycles where there's a bit of bodywork at the front and then the rest of it kind of dissolves towards the back. It's very much form follows function. And you can see it here because it's basically all gap. But some of the most interesting bits are actually what's underneath the skin. First of all, it's got pushrod active suspension, but the really naughty bit is this. Now this is a completely bespoke, as in not based on anything at all, 6.6 litre V12 with 4 turbos. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now most naturally aspirated V12s make about 800 brake horsepower at this capacity, roughly 6.5 litres. This one makes 1250 brake horsepower on its own. But that's not all. If you move down the back of the engine, you'll see the 8-speed gearbox from Ricardo, and that's supplemented by this 200 horsepower e-motor to help sort of manage the torque while the V12 gets into its turbo stride. And it also helps smooth out the gear shifts for driving around nice and calmly. But that is not all, because the front axle also gets 2 more e-motors, each delivering 200 horsepower and giving 4-wheel drive and the ability to torque vector. So this is what sits on the front axle. Electric motor, little gearbox, little gearbox. Add all of that up and you've got an 1850 brake horsepower car driving all 4 wheels through an 8-speed paddle shift with a locking diff at the back. It does sound quite serious.
As do the figures, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.3 seconds, 0 to 186 in an estimated 9 seconds. Top speed they reckon is 260 miles an hour with a 9,800 RPM redline. That's proper hypercar territory. Weights are unconfirmed but likely around 1,550 kilograms dry.
Interestingly, this monster engine already meets Euro 7 emission standards, but Zenvo says there's modularity within this block, so they can make a V10 or a V8, and that carbon monocoque can also be modified. So the story here is more than just about the Aurora.
Now, some of you might remember the Gimaro Craftler with a 7-litre quad-turbo V12 that apparently makes over 2,100 brake horsepower from the motor alone. But until that shows up, the Zenvo it is.
But it's the track-biased version, the Agil, which is still fully road legal, don't forget, that actually gets less power. And that's because the Agil is only rear-wheel drive, so it does without the extra 400 horsepower and the added weight of the front-mounted electric motors that appear in the Tour. That means this thing weighs 1,300 kilograms, which for this sort of thing is incredibly light.
Okay, so that 1,300 kilograms will be more likely 1,360 dry weight, but that's still impressive. With that in mind, it only manages 0 to 62 in 2.5 seconds and a 224 mile an hour top speed. But it's got a lot more downforce, 880 kilograms at 155 miles an hour, and a lot more in tension. That's the one you want to be taking to the track. But it's not just an R version. This is almost a completely different idea.
So the Agil gets more aggressive aero, obviously. If you look from the front, while still recognisably an Aurora, it's made up mostly of gap. Pop up over the wheel arch and there is yet more void, through which you can see the exposed pushrod suspension, giving it that kind of skeletal vibe. And then behind the front wheel arch is these sills, which are like blunt force trauma to the airflow. Look at the undercut. It's massive. And then if I look towards the back of the car, it's essentially all gap, because I can see straight through the car. Hi! Again, in the spine of the central cell, it's got a bigger, more aggressive scoop, presumably to feed even more cold air into the engine, and it all feeds down into a kind of pontoon where the exhausts sit at the back. But again, you can see exposed suspension components, which makes it feel more intentional, and it all feeds backwards to this massive biplane active rear wing, which can do air brake functions. Interestingly, if you look at the back of this car, again, it's mainly gap. There's not an awful lot going on back here, apart from the really aggressive aero. Look at that Venturi. This is basically a racing car for the road. This is the Aurora that's dressed up to party.
And then when you get on the inside, it's kind of more of the same in that it's pared back and elegant, but it's still got that kind of jazzy sense of theatre that makes it quite exciting. A few things I want to point out. First of all, when you actually get in this car, when the door comes away from the side, it takes all of the portion of the sill with it. So when you're trying to sit in it, it's very easy. The gap is quite big and you can sit down and get your legs in without any problem at all, which is important if you're a rich person that wants to get in and out of your hypercar in an elegant way. Then when you get in here, it feels almost like this central cell is in two kind of pods and there's loads of room. I mean, my shoulder doesn't actually cross this central spar. So me sat in the passenger seat would be perfectly comfortable. Then you're looking forwards into this really curved windscreen. It's almost like looking through the front of a helmet visor, which makes it feel quite special. And then all of this carbon, there's lots and lots of details that makes me want to touch it. Like it's got this really nice, small and thin carbon fibre steering wheel, but where your hand sits into the steering wheel, it feels very comfortable and very natural. And there are no stalks because back here are two massive and metal shift paddles. This is up and then on the left hand side here is down. But all of the controls for things like wipers, these are these rotary controls down here, indicators are up here. So it's got all the functions that you need from a modern kind of supercar. The key lives in this little slot here, and this is also where you start the engine. So that's engine start and stop, and then you can engage the gears here. Then there's another rotary control with a screen in it here, like the ones on the steering wheel. So you just turn them to change the aircon and then press to adjust the function. There's no screen. There's no big telly stuck on the front of the dash. There's no extra kind of fripperies that you don't need. If you're not concentrating driving this car, then you're in the wrong place. But that's not to say that it doesn't have modern convenience. There's cup holders in the dash there. There are these dials and there's a triple set which give you the usual stuff. So power, revs, and then your temperatures and fuel gauge. But this central screen here actually rotates. So if you do need a bit of screen time, you have it. But I prefer it with the analog style dials. The one thing you keep thinking though is, like, the quality of the carbon fibre is really cool. The seats look dreadfully uncomfortable, but they're not. I am actually sat in exactly the right position here. And then if you start looking around, you've got these fretwork kind of inserts, which behind them are the tweeters for the stereo. There's a subwoofer down there, some mids in the top and some mids in the door. It feels like this is a very encompassing design. Even the rear view mirror, because there is no rear view, is digital and you can see everything behind you. The convenience is there, but so is the kind of theatrical extremity. I think this is a car that sits somewhere between the austerity of like a Porsche hypercar and Bugatti's slightly camp theatricality. This is like a midway point. And I really feel that it's got some chops. This is nothing like Zenvos of old. It's a completely different thing. Now, this is a pre-production prototype, so it's not actually finished. But if this is the quality they can manage in the car that isn't fully built yet, I think it bodes well. And actually, it's pretty damn good.
As you might expect, the Agil feels less GT-ish. More carbon fibre, more Alcantara, less colour, an almost racing car aesthetic. And yes, you can have harnesses. So what you have here are two faces of the same coin. One that leans into roadwork, the other a more focused, lightweight, rear-wheel drive track car. But why did they turn out like this? Well, let's have a quick look at the parents.
Essentially, the family tree of slightly brutal Danish supercars, even if the Aurora is completely unrelated. Of course, Zenvo isn't actually a new company. It's been going for nearly 20 years, and it started with cars like these, the ST1s. Now, those were 5.8 litre V8s with superchargers and turbochargers to make upwards of 1100 brake horsepower. They were raw and they were fun, and Top Gear doesn't have a great relationship with this car, but I'm going to completely gloss over that. And then came this, the TS1 GT, which was a kind of updated, more grand touring version of the ST1. But it wasn't just a little refresh. This got different motor mounts and a 7-speed sequential gearbox. The TSR was the track version, like an early version of the Agil, featuring a 250 kilogram weight saving, a twin supercharged V8, and a power-to-weight ratio of 1.35 brake horsepower per kilogram. Which sounds messy, but it is a lot. And then there was this, the TSR GT. So it got more aero, more downforce, 1,360 brake horsepower, more of everything. But even this wasn't the final iteration. And then there's a Zenvo that most people actually know. It's called the TSRS, and it features this huge tippy wing that kind of leans over in corners to give extra aerodynamics, and it's officially called a centripetal wing. Now the TSRS basically took all the good bits of the previous cars and kind of plumbed them all together. But the Aurora, it's kind of something different entirely. It's less brutal, more delicate, but with more tech and more ability. It should also be quite a lot harder hitting. So that's a little look at Zenvo's Aurora Twins, two very different cars based on the same bones. But these aren't just cars. They appear to be a new era for Zenvo, not just next generation, but next level. Though at 2.8 million euros, they're also not cheap. Which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments.